Ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. We are in official countdown mode. You will hear from Chief Justice John Roberts. You'll also hear from former President Donald Trump. And we'll discuss the imminent decision. A unanimous, I think it's going to be unanimous, but it will at least be an 8-1 or 7-2 Supreme Court decision overturning the Colorado ban. The absurd, unconstitutional, totally partisan, completely ridiculous Colorado ban. We'll talk about that. That is going to be a historic day in American history. It'll be one of the most beautiful days for democracy. It will not only be historic, but it will be a monumental and biblical rebuke, or constitutional, I should say, rebuke or refutation of the most outlandish decision by Colorado Supreme Court and liberal Democrats on that court. Hit subscribe. You'll hear from President Trump right now. This is the Daily Beast. There are other publications also. Be prepared for a unanimous Supreme Court ruling in Trump's favor. The Daily Beast does not like Trump. It's a liberal publication. Okay, they wrote a hit piece on me, or they published a hit piece long ago because I was a Bernie Sanders supporter. Now I support President Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump, future President Trump. We had record low poverty with Trump, record highs in household median income. We had so many great things in terms of the economy, interest rates to buy a home, mortgage rates with 3%, even less than that. They're now over 7 to 8% to buy a home. We had the Doha Agreement that brought Americans home from endless military conflict that Trump negotiated and Biden completely botched. It was a May 1st, 2021 withdrawal. The first president to step foot in North Korea was Trump. The only president to allocate more, he allocated more funding to historically black colleges and universities, Trump did, than any president ever, made the funding permanent. He moved the embassy to Jerusalem, which was important, very important for a person of my background. And we can go on forever, okay? He sided with Asian American students against Harvard in a discrimination case, Trump did. We can go on. He was a great president. We had interest rates that were low. Inflation was low. Unemployment was low. Real wages were up. Real wages are down under Biden's presidency, okay? And we're heading towards a major stock market crash that I've been telling you, and I wrote about that in The Federalist. To read my writing in The Hill, The Huffington Post, Salon, The Jerusalem Post, The Federalist, other publications, go to hagoodman.com. Hit subscribe right now. Let's listen to Chief Justice John Roberts. It's already a done deal in my view. I have no inside knowledge, but it's already a done deal. Chief Justice Roberts is now simply trying to get the court to be unanimous. They've already decided that it was unconstitutional what's taken place with the Supreme Court, with the Colorado Supreme Court ruling. They've already decided, in my humble view. You are now going to see whether it's unanimous or 7-2. I think it's going to be unanimous because the liberal justices were equally appalled at the Colorado lawyers' arguments. Hit subscribe right now. Let's listen to John Roberts.
There was a congressional action to permit Confederate officers or people who supported the Confederacy to hold office before the 14th Amendment, correct? So there must have been a thought that there was a pre-existing disqualification.
That's absolutely right. There were a flood of amnesty requests even before Section 3 went into effect because everybody understood at the time that those people would be disqualified the moment that Section 3 was enacted forever unless they received amnesty.
Counselor, what do you do with what would seem to me to be plain consequences of your position? If Colorado's position is upheld, surely there will be disqualification proceedings on the other side, and some of those will succeed. Some of them will have different standards of proof. Some of them will have different rules about evidence. Maybe the Senate report won't be accepted in others because it's hearsay. Maybe it's beyond a reasonable doubt, whatever. In very quick order, I would expect, although my predictions have never been correct, I would expect that a goodly number of states will say, whoever the Democratic candidate is, you're off the ballot, and others, for the Republican candidate, you're off the ballot, and it'll come down to just a handful of states that are going to decide the presidential election. That's a pretty daunting consequence.
Well, certainly, Your Honor, the fact that there are potential frivolous applications of a constitutional provision isn't a reason.
Well, no, hold on. I mean, you might think they're frivolous, but probably the people who are bringing them may not think they're frivolous. Insurrection is a broad term, and if there's some debate about it, I suppose that will go into the decision, and then eventually what we would be deciding whether it was an insurrection when one president did something as opposed to when somebody else did something else. And what do? Do we wait until near the time of counting the ballots and sort of go through which states are valid and which states aren't?
There's a reason Section 3 has been dormant for 150 years, and it's because we haven't seen anything like January 6th. Since Reconstruction. Insurrection against the Constitution is something extraordinary.
It seems to me you're avoiding the question, which is other states may have different views about what constitutes insurrection. And now you're saying, well, it's all right because somebody, presumably us, are going to decide, well, they said they thought that was an insurrection, but they were wrong. And maybe they thought it was right. And we'd have to develop rules for what constitutes an insurrection.
Yes, Your Honor, just like this court interprets other constitutional provisions, this court can make clear that an insurrection against the Constitution is something extraordinary. And in particular, it really requires a concerted group effort to resist through violence, not some ordinary application of state or federal law, but the functions mandated by the Constitution.
On your point
itself.
that it's been
Get
You're welcome.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to get a unanimous decision, and we'll hear from Kavanaugh right now. But all John Roberts is doing, and hit subscribe if you're new to this channel, all John Roberts is doing is trying to get a consensus or a unanimous decision right now. He'll probably lose the immunity case, but then again, he's not going to be they're not going to convict him before November. So he can do away with the special counsel when he becomes president. And so the DC case is already unraveled. Like the Georgia case, they're not going to convict him of anything other than hush money, because the Florida classified data case, that's already has no chance of being conviction. He was the president with the power to declassify. So he's sitting pretty Trump. The only thing they can get him on is the hush money payment in New York, and the entire planet will know it was just purely politically motivated, especially in New York, with Tammany Hall going after their direct political rivals. So the Supreme Court decision, in my humble view, has already taken place. They've already decided that Trump, which is the most important, this is the landmark, most important. This also destroys the DC case, by the way. But this decision is a landmark decision because the Colorado ban is predicated upon the absurd belief that Trump engaged in a rebellion. He, of course, did not do so. It is plain to see the Federal Bureau of Investigation did not find any evidence that Trump engaged in a rebellion. He was not indicted ever on forging a rebellion. And by the way, to my super chat, thank you. And to the members, Nicholas, thank you so very much. Born to Raise Hogs, thank you so much for your super chat. And I agree with you. Assange should be free. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Nicholas, again, as always. My goodness. Thank you. So right now, John Roberts, you'll hear from Kavanaugh. John Roberts is simply trying to get a consensus or everyone on board. If it's a unanimous verdict or if it's an 8-1 or 7-2, it will still be a monumental rebuke of an absurd, highly apoplectic ruling. You cannot, he wasn't even convicted of a rebellion, nor was he indicted of a rebellion, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation found no evidence that he organized a rebellion, yet they think, they believe, they truly feel that he engaged in a rebellion. Typical liberal Democratic Party viewpoint. They truly feel something, so therefore it's reality. Here is Kavanaugh, Justice Kavanaugh. Let's continue, and hit subscribe if you're new to this channel. This is huge, ladies and gentlemen.
Justice Kavanaugh?
The concerns of some question have been the states having such power over a national office. Other questions about the different states having different standards of proof. And they seem underscored by this case, at least the dissenting opinion below. Justice Sommore said, I've been involved, quote, I've been involved in the justice system for 33 years now, and what took place here doesn't resemble anything I've seen in a courtroom, end quote. And then added, quote, what transpired in this litigation fell woefully short of what due process demands, end quote. Now, I don't know whether I agree or not. I'm not going to take a position on that, but the fact that someone's complaining not about the bottom line conclusion, but about the very processes that were used in the state would seem to, and that would be permitted, seems to underscore the concerns that have been raised about state power. Just wanted to give you a chance to address that because that was powerful language. Again, not disagreeing about the conclusion, but about the very fairness of the process.
Yes, Your Honor, but that language was, with respect to Justice Sommore, just not correct. President Trump had a 5-day trial in this case. He had the opportunity to call any witnesses that he wanted. He had the opportunity to cross-examine our witnesses. He had the opportunity to testify if he wanted to testify. And of course, the process was expedited because ballot access decisions are always on a fast schedule. But in this whole case, from the trial court all the way up to this court, President Trump has never identified a single process other than expert depositions that he wanted to have that he didn't get. He had the opportunity for fact witness depositions. He had the opportunity to call witnesses remotely. He didn't use all of his time at trial. There was ample process here, and this is how ballot access determinations in election cases are decided all the time.
Okay. Second question. Some of the rhetoric of your position, I don't think it is your position, but some of the rhetoric of your position seems to suggest unless the states can do this, no one can prevent.
One quick point. Then why did the justice state that the process was flawed? I don't think the Colorado lawyer answered that question. Justice Kavanaugh stated that one of the Supreme Court justices in the Colorado decision, one of the dissenting justices, stated that the person never saw such a flawed process in that person's life. The rebuttal from the lawyer for Colorado was, well, Trump could have done a lot of things. It's like, well, maybe he didn't engage in those avenues because it was such a flawed process and he didn't want to waste time or money. That's not, simply saying Trump could have done more in terms of, his lawyers could have done more for him is not a rebuttal to Kavanaugh citing a justice who claims that it was the most perverted, distorted, unfair process he or she has ever seen in the history of the court or in their tenure. So he's not really answering the question there, but let's continue.
Insurrectionists from holding federal office. But obviously Congress has enacted statutes, including one still in effect, Section 2383 of Title 18 prohibits insurrection. It's a federal criminal statute. And if you're convicted of that, it says shall be disqualified from holding any office. And so there is a federal statute on the books, but President Trump has not been charged with that. So what are we to make of that?
Two things, Your Honor. Section 2383 was initially enacted about 6 years before Section 3. It wasn't meant as implementing legislation related to Section.
So really quickly, you'll hear this again, but Justice Kavanaugh asks the Colorado lawyer, hey, he hasn't been convicted, nor has he even been charged with rebellion. And also, there's a statute in the books that says if you've been convicted or charged, you can't be president. So why would the Colorado Supreme Court take it upon themselves to convict Trump of something he hasn't been charged with, or convict Trump in their own minds? You see what Democrats have done is they've tried to criminalize Trump's personality. They said he compelled or incited people to commit crimes. He influenced people to commit crimes. There's no evidence that anyone committed a crime because of Trump's words. Furthermore, he used the word peaceful. So Democrats aren't being indicted for the billions in property damage that summer of that year or the year prior. And I agree with why people demonstrated peacefully. But you cannot accuse the words of a politician as having direct impact on what supporters do. Otherwise, you would have indicted and imprisoned a number of Democrats already for what took place that summer. Democrats were not only inciting and compelling and influencing people to commit crimes with their words, but they were bailing out people who did commit crimes, and then some of the people who were bailed out ended up committing even more egregious crimes and heinous crimes. So then what happens there? It's never a rebellion when you have billions in property damage and 19, 20 lives lost if it's a Democratic Party, if the Democratic Party gives tacit approval to the chaos. And by the way, I agree with why people peacefully demonstrated, but not the billions in property damage that CNN stated was mostly peaceful. Fiery, but mostly peaceful, as a reporter stood in front of a building set ablaze. Then you had Trump who had to seek shelter. The president of the United States of America had to seek shelter late May because demonstrators were outside the White House. Was that not a rebellion? Okay. And so what constitutes a rebellion? Billions in property damage or a terrible, horrendous one day where people were completely unarmed and there wasn't billions in property damage, and four or five people lost their lives who were supporters of Trump. So Trump is not very good at fomenting a rebellion, if that's the case. And one person lost his life. It was terrible, a law enforcement official. Okay, very likely because of the chaos and mayhem, but not directly because of what Trump said. Nobody committed a crime because of what Trump said. Trump did not tell people to commit a crime. On the other hand, you had Democrats who deliberately gave specific instructions to demonstrators. And that's public record. Prior to what took place that summer. Hit subscribe if you're new to this channel. Let's continue.
Section 2383 was initially enacted about 6 years.
And if you're convicted of that from holding federal office. Some of the rhetoric of your position, I don't think it is your position, but some of the rhetoric of your position seems to suggest unless the states can do this, no one can prevent insurrectionists from holding federal office. But obviously Congress has enacted statutes, including one still in effect. Section 2383 of Title 18 prohibits insurrection. It's a federal criminal statute. And if you're convicted of that, it says shall be disqualified from holding any office. And so there is a federal statute on the books, but President Trump has not been charged with that. So what are we to make of that?
Two things, Your Honor. Section 2383 was initially enacted about 6 years before Section 3. It wasn't meant as implementing legislation related to Section 3. And I would emphasize that by the time that Section 3 was ratified, most Confederates had already received criminal pardons.
I guess the question is a little bit different, which is if the concern you have, which I understand, is that insurrectionists should not be able to hold federal office, there is a tool to ensure that that does not happen, namely federal prosecution of insurrectionists. And if convicted, Congress made clear you are automatically barred from holding a federal office. That tool exists, you agree, and could be used, but has not, could be used against someone who committed insurrection. You agree with that?
That's absolutely right, Your Honor. But I would just make the point that the framers of Section 3 clearly understood that criminal prosecutions weren't sufficient because oftentimes insurrectionists go unpunished, as was the case in the Civil War, and that the least we can do is impose a civil disqualification penalty so that even if we don't have the stomach to throw someone in jail.
Well, they had the quo warranto provision that was in effect then from 1870 until 1948, but then obviously that dropped out and hasn't been seen as necessary since then. Last question, in trying to figure out what Section 3 means, and kind of to the extent it's elusive language or vague language. What about the idea that we should think about democracy, think about the right of the people to elect candidates of their choice, of letting the people decide, because your position has the effect of disenfranchising voters to a significant degree. And should that be something, does that come in when we think about should we read Section 3 this way or read it that way? What about the background principle, if you agree, of democracy?
So Democrats routinely state that Republicans are trying to disenfranchise people from voting Democrat. This Colorado decision literally disenfranchises 80 to 90 million Americans. Okay? Literally takes the vote away from 80 to 90 million Americans who want Trump. He's up in the polls. He hasn't been convicted of a rebellion. He hasn't, the Federal Bureau of Investigation hasn't found any evidence that he engaged in a rebellion. He hasn't even been indicted for overthrowing or a rebellion. He used the word peaceful. None of the people who committed crimes did so because of Trump's words. And none of them were convicted because they, blindly listened to Trump. And people were already acquitted because of the video footage, the exculpatory evidence that the January committee and the DOJ withheld from the American people showed that most of the citizens that day were allowed into the building by law enforcement, and they peacefully walked through the doors. And you had 2 or 3 people already acquitted. So this was not a rebellion. This was what took place every day that summer. Okay? Except it was in our nation's capital. See, Democrats, media, the establishment, never Trump Republicans, they don't care so much if you have never-ending chaos and, property damage and mayhem on the streets of your city. God forbid. What took place every day that summer, curfews, and again, I agree with why people peacefully demonstrated, but there was billions in property damage, not one tear shed by AOC or by Kinzinger or Cheney or anyone who opposes Trump, who blames him for January. And that's the way the political system works. How many businesses were destroyed? How many cars, houses were destroyed? CNN had literally a building set ablaze behind the reporter, and the journalist was saying fiery but mostly peaceful. The Orwellian nature of America's political establishment, to see what only they want to see, and to ignore the most grandiose crimes, it's unbelievable. That alone is why you should vote for Trump. Hit subscribe if you're new to this channel. Let's continue. And then you'll hear the response to disenfranchising tens of millions, over 80 million Americans.
I'd like to make 3 points on that, Justice Kavanaugh. The first is that constitutional safeguards are for the purpose of safeguarding our democracy, not just for the next election cycle, but for generations to come. And second, Section 3 is designed to protect our democracy in that very way. The framers of Section 3 knew from painful experience that those who had violently broken their oaths to the Constitution.
He hasn't been convicted. How has Trump broken any oath when he hasn't been convicted? Can somebody answer that? How on earth has Trump broken any oath when he hasn't been convicted of a rebellion, nor has he been charged with engaging in a rebellion?
Couldn't be trusted to hold power again because they could dismantle our constitutional democracy from within. And so they created a democratic safety valve. President Trump can go ask Congress to give him amnesty by a 2/3 vote. But unless he does that, our Constitution protects us from insurrectionists. And third, this case illustrates the danger of refusing to apply Section 3 as written, because the reason we're here is that President Trump tried to disenfranchise 80 million Americans.
He went through the court system. He did not try to disenfranchise anyone. His goal or aim was never to have a chaotic day. He did not try to interfere with any proceeding. And the notion that Trump tried to foment a rebellion to prevent the transfer of power is so stupid and absurd. He didn't feel he was being treated in a just or equitable manner. He voiced his concerns through the courts and through his freedom of expression or protest. It didn't work out well because, like I said, only Democrats can protest and demonstrate. Apparently, Trump or conservatives simply cannot, for various reasons, which we don't have to go into right now. But he did not do anything of the. He's being accused by Colorado and by MSNBC and by every liberal Democrat of something he didn't do. Similar to being an operative of the Kremlin. He was never anything like that. So, you will hear now, you will hear now Justice Kagan and also Justice Amy Coney Barrett. It's already been decided in my humble view. They're just waiting because I think that Chief Justice John Roberts is lobbying for a unanimous decision. Okay? Hit subscribe if you're new to this channel.
But maybe put most boldly, I think that the question that you have to confront is why a single state should decide who gets to be president of the United States. In other words, this question of whether a former president is disqualified for insurrection to be president again is, just say it. It sounds awfully national to me. So whatever means there are to enforce it would suggest that they have to be federal, national means. Why does, if you weren't from Colorado and you were from Wisconsin or you were from Michigan, and it really, what the Michigan Secretary of State did is going to make the difference between, whether candidate A is elected or candidate B is elected. I mean, that seems quite extraordinary, doesn't it?
No, Your Honor, because ultimately it's this court that's going to decide that question of federal constitutional eligibility and settle the issue for the nation. And certainly it's not unusual that questions of national importance come up.
Well, I suppose this court would be saying something along the lines of that a state has the power to do it. But I guess I was asking you to go a little bit further and saying, why should that be the right rule? Why should a single state have the ability to make this determination, not only for their own citizens, but for the rest of the nation?
Because Article 2 gives them the power to appoint their own electors as they see fit. But if they're going to use a federal constitutional qualification as a ballot access determinant, then it's creating a federal constitutional question that then this court decides, and other courts, other states, if this court affirms the decision below.
The issue is that he hasn't been convicted yet. Therefore, Colorado made an absurd leap of logic. Maybe the Colorado lawyer would have some kind of argument had he been convicted already. That was Justice Kagan. Okay? So the liberal Supreme Court justices are basically on board. That's why it's only a matter of time. Look, he's won the election at 24 in a landslide once this takes place. This dismantles the D.C. case, overturns the Colorado ruling, but it tells the entire planet Trump did not commit a rebellion. And the notion that he did is not enough to keep him from any ballot. The lawyer was saying, well, it's a constitutional dilemma. The state has every right to ban a rebel. He hasn't been convicted of a rebellion, nor has he been charged. The only thing they're convicting him is trying to compel people. So the Colorado lawyer, the argument is just going around and around in circles. Well, he committed this rebellion. And then the justices are saying, well, he hasn't been convicted, so what gives you the right to ban him? Oh, well, we've never had this moment in time where somebody committed a rebellion, but he hasn't been convicted. So what are you doing? Well, we feel that he has. Look at his words. That's your viewpoint. You might watch CNN and MSNBC and read the Washington Post and New York Times and feel that you have a grasp on reality. The bottom line is the whole planet knows that he didn't try to commit a rebellion. The Federal Bureau of Investigation couldn't find any evidence that he did. He hasn't been convicted, nor has he been charged of a rebellion, and he wasn't even there, and he didn't know anyone who committed the crime. And an unarmed woman, a supporter of Trump, had her life taken. And so, just because the Colorado justices feel that he committed a rebellion, doesn't mean he did. There has to be evidence, which there's zero evidence of any attempt at overthrowing the government, other than deliberately manipulated and deceptively edited chaotic scenes in front of the building while people are actually let into the building peacefully. So, I mean, the tape doesn't lie, and so you see, like, Democrats see people entering the building. How do they still think that he tried to foment a rebellion? I don't get it. But you have very intelligent, highly educated, morally superior Democrats, liberal Democrats, who will believe that their feelings overshadow reality, or that their feelings can mold reality into what they think happened. Let's continue. Hit subscribe if you're new to this channel, to my super chat and the members, Nicholas and Born to Raise Hogs. Thank you so much.
Determining that President Trump is ineligible to be president. Other states would still have to determine what effect that would have on their own state's law and state procedure.
Well, I mean, if we affirmed and we said he was ineligible to be president, yes, maybe some states would say, well, we're going to keep him on the ballot anyway. But I mean, really, it's going to have, as Justice Kagan said, the effect of Colorado deciding. And it's true. I just want to push back a little bit on, well, it's a national thing because this court will decide it. You say that we have to review Colorado's factual record with clear error as the standard of review. So we would be stuck. The first mover state here, Colorado, we're stuck with that record. And, I don't want to get into whether the record, I mean, maybe the record is great, but what if the record wasn't? I mean, what if it wasn't a fulsome record? What if, the hearsay rules are, one-offs? Or what if this is just made by the Secretary of State without much process at all? How do we review those factual findings? Why should clear error review apply? And doesn't that just kind of buckle back into this point that Justice Kagan was making, that we made with Mr. Mitchell, too, that it just doesn't seem like a state call?
3 points, Your Honor. The first is that ordinarily, of course, this court reviews factual findings for clear error, but President Trump made the point in his reply brief that sometimes on constitutional questions that require a uniform resolution, this court can do something more like a Bose Corp-style independent review of the factual record. And we would have no objection to that, given that the record here, really the facts that are disputed here are incredibly narrow. The essence of our case is President Trump's own statements that he made in public view for all to see.
He literally used the word peaceful. Where did he tell anyone you have to overthrow the government? Where? Excuse me. Where did he tell? Did he say overthrow the government? Did Trump ever say engage in a rebellion? Where did Trump ever say overthrow the government? They never. Trump never, when the Colorado lawyer says, well, it's his own words, when did he used the word peaceful, go peacefully. What kind of call to arms is go peacefully? Yeah, he was upset. He didn't, the real political goal here is to try to criminalize Trump's discontent and refusal to accept results that he didn't think were accurate. And the majority of Republicans agree with Trump. And the rebuttal can be, well, there's been investigations, not according to Republicans or Trump. The investigations that Democrats claim refute every complaint or criticism made by Trump were not truly investigations in the manner of the Mueller probe, for example. There weren't congressional committees. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, law enforcement officials, they weren't involved. These were quick, very expedited investigations. Oh, Trump is wrong. And no congressional testimony, no nothing. No law enforcement, no special counsel, no nothing. Trump was wrong, and everything he says is baseless. And so Trump did not think that the investigations that apparently to Democrats prove that Trump was wrong. I'm speaking in an algorithmically friendly manner, by the way, but he didn't feel that his claims were truly vetted. He didn't feel that his discontent was truly, he didn't feel that his allegations were truly investigated. With the Mueller probe, they took 2 years, around 2 years, millions and millions of pages to find nothing. Trump did not have that luxury. So let's continue. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead. Oh, let's continue. Let's go ahead and
suppose there's a country that proclaims again and again and again that the United States is its biggest enemy, and suppose that the President of the United States, for diplomatic reasons, think that it's in the best interests of the United States to provide funds or release funds so that they can be used by that country. Could a state determine that that person has given aid and comfort to the enemy and therefore keep that person off the ballot?
No, Your Honor. This court has never interpreted the aid and comfort language, which also is present in the treason clause. But commentators have suggested it's been rarely applied because treason prosecutions are so rare. But commentators have suggested that, first of all, that aid and comfort really only applies in the context of a declared war, or at least an adversarial relationship where there is, in fact, a war between two countries. And second, the intent standard would do a lot of work there, because under Section 3, whatever the underlying conduct is, engaging in insurrection or aid and comfort has to be done with the intent to further the unlawful purpose of the insurrection or to aid the enemies in their pursuit of war against the United States.
Now, let me come back to the question of what we would do if different states had adjudicated the question of whether former President Trump is an insurrectionist using a different record, different rulings on the admissibility of evidence, perhaps different standards of proof. Then what would we do?
Ultimately, this court would, first of all, if there were deficiencies in the record, the court could either refuse to hear the case or it could decide on the basis of deficiencies of the record.
Well, would we have to decide what is the appropriate rule of evidence that should be applied in this case? Would we have to decide what is the appropriate standard of proof? Would we give any deference to these findings by state court judges, some of whom may be elected? Would we have to have our own trial?
No, Your Honor. This court takes the evidentiary record as it's given, and here we have an evidentiary record that all the parties agree is sufficient for a decision in this case. And then, as I discussed earlier, there's a possibility of a Bose Corp independent review of the facts. But ultimately, what we have here is an insurrection that was incited in plain sight.
You're really not answering my question. It's not helpful if you don't do that. Suppose we have two different records, two different bodies of evidence, two different rulings on questions of admissibility, two different standards of proof, two different sets of fact findings by two different judges, or maybe multiple.
Justice Alito is saying, well, since he hasn't been convicted and Colorado just determined on their own that Trump is a rebel, what is the standard? Is the standard simply what one state Supreme Court feels is reality? How can Colorado see Trump as a rebel, but Michigan not see Trump as a rebel? How can California see Trump as fomenting a rebellion, but Alabama or South Carolina or Oklahoma or Florida, they don't see that rebellion? That is not an actual overthrowing of the government, or that's not an attempt to overthrow the government. Okay, so you actually have to have reality on your side to accuse Trump of a despicable crime. You can't just say we feel he did because we heard him and we think that it's obvious. Well, most of humanity heard him and said, yeah, he didn't do what he's accused of doing. What Democrats have tried to do for the past 7 years is accuse Trump of things he never did, and then pontificate as if he did those things, and then slowly realize, whether it's the Mueller probe or this 9-0 decision, because it'll be 8-1, 7-2, or 9-0, I think unanimous, a complete rebuke of the absurd fantasy Democrats have that he committed a rebellion. Democrats will finally have to acknowledge that their fantasies have been just that, fantasies, not reality. It's not reality to think that Trump tried to overthrow the government. It was a terrible day, shouldn't have happened. Oh my God, very bad. But so is that entire summer. If that day is a rebellion, every single day that summer is a rebellion, with billions in property damage and lives lost, and thousands upon 10,000 plus arrested for criminal acts, with Democrats bailing out demonstrators who committed criminal acts. Again, I agree with why people peacefully demonstrated, but don't pontificate about thank you, Robert. Don't pontificate. Kevin! Okay, Kevin, thank you. Love you, Paul, and not sure what the message, but thank you. All right, let's continue.
Judges in multiple states. Then what do we do?
Well, first, this court would set the legal standard, and then it would decide which view of the record was correct, I think, under that. If this court had two cases,
which view of what record? Which record?
If this court had two cases before it, and both of the records were sufficient insofar as both sides had the opportunity to present their case and the essential facts in the record that everyone agreed was sufficient for decision, then this court would have to look at the evidence presented and decide which holding was correct, and then decide that issue for the country. And certainly here, when there is a complete record, lower courts then will be applying that decision, and I think it's unlikely that any court would say, we're going to reach a different decision than the U.S. Supreme Court did, particularly if the court relies on the facts, the indisputable facts of what President Trump said on video and in his Twitter feed, which is really the essence of our case here.
Thank you, Kevin. What indisputable facts? This is the thing. Stephen Colbert said this also. Nobody disagrees with, and then the Colorado lawyer, it's indisputable. The opposite is true. Most of the country views Trump as having performed a speech, and then criminal activity that had nothing to do with Trump took place. Okay? There was nothing indisputable about what took place that day. Everything is in dispute. Listen to Vivek Ramaswamy about what he thinks took place that day. Everything is in dispute. Trust in government and media is at an all-time low because Democrats have never stopped leveling false accusations against Trump. They have obsessed over Trump. They have accused him of a rebellion. They've accused him of being an operative of the Kremlin. They've accused him of, praising despicable people. They accuse them of everything under the sun. Nothing is true. Almost like 95% of what he's been accused of isn't true. So, but listen to the way it's indisputable. I mean, it's indisputable. Christine, thank you. Kevin, thank you. Yes, that's right. Rap artist. Yes, I agree. Everything is in dispute. Christine, thank you so very, very, very much. Let's continue.
Well, you had an expert. Let's just take that example. Had an expert testify about the meaning of what President Trump said. But do you think it's possible that a different state court would apply Daubert differently and say that this person should not be allowed to express an expert opinion on that question? You think that's beyond the realm of imagination?
Not at all, Your Honor. 2 points on that. Number one, President Trump didn't appeal the admission of that evidence in this case. But number two, the second point is that Professor Sini he didn't opine on the meaning of President Trump's words. He opined on the effect that those words had on violent extremists. And the essence of his testimony was built around videotaped statements of President Trump himself, encouraging, inciting, and praising political violence.
He did nothing of the sort that day. He did nothing of the sort. T-Duck, hello! Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. One of the great names in this channel's history. Christine, thank you also. Thank you, everybody in my super chat. Thank you. He did nothing of the sort. Trump did nothing of the sort. He certainly did not encourage anyone to commit a crime. And again, with Trump, this cannot be what you think he did. It has to, the American political establishment has been morphed into, what do we think Trump did? Let's look at this bizarre drawing and say, well, we think it's a butterfly. No, well, we think it's a pigeon. Oh, well, no, we think it's a hummingbird. Oh, this is not a matter of subjective opinion. You are accusing Trump of a very specific crime. To my super chat, thank you. He didn't commit this crime. To accuse him of committing this crime is absurd. They've already decided whether they deny the immunity case beforehand. Who knows? I mean, they might deny immunity, which also doesn't mean much. That just means that despite being immune because he performed a speech, he could still be convicted potentially of fomenting chaos, which they have to prove in a court of law. They won't be able to. It's a DC jury, so like a New York jury, they're in it for Trump. But the good thing for Trump is that once he regains the Oval Office, he can do away with the special counsel. That's part of the executive branch. So, but let's go ahead and listen to Trump talk about this and more. Hit subscribe if you're new to this channel. To my super chat, thank you so much.
We want to stay right here, and I want to thank you very much. This is an honor. We cover all corners of your great state. You know that. And they said, Waterloo, what about Waterloo? I said, we got to get to Waterloo. So here we are. And I'm thrilled to be back in your incredible state with thousands of proud, hardworking American patriots. Let me begin by wishing you all a very Merry Christmas. You remember? Do you remember about 7 years ago I said, they're going to be saying Merry Christmas again because department stores, of course, they have other problems now. They're being robbed. The department stores right now, they have very big problems. 400 or 500 people run into them, grab everything, run out, nothing happens because our law enforcement's not allowed to do their job. They're great, they're not allowed to do their job. So they have other problems too, but they say Merry Christmas now at least. And It's very important. That was a big deal, and now nobody even thinks about it. We say Merry Christmas. I'm honored by that. We're just 27 days away from Iowa's first in the nation. Thank you very much, President Trump, because you're first in the nation because I said you were first in the nation. It's very simple. Ladies and gentlemen, say that. No, think of it. We are for parental rights. Who believes it's dead? There is no American dream. This is not just a campaign. And together, and the announcer, this was sort of a straight interview at a major network. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor to have Governor Ron DeSantis with us. No, it's DeSantis. So that's good branding. Do you agree? That's good. Nah, but he is sanctimonious. In the new Rasmussen poll of the general election, we're dominating by 10, 11, 12, even 14 points. And the Washington Post had it up 11. And then they said, this must be an outlier. They spend $1.5 million on a poll, the Washington Post, and they panic. They say, this must be an outlier. This is the first time anyone ever had a poll, and they said, we think our poll must be wrong, but we have even better numbers than that. No, they're going crazy. But none of this matters if you don't show up to support us on January 15th and again on November 5th. So it's again the same thing. You got to show up. Silence you, and in the end, they're not after me, they're after you. I just happen to be standing in their way, and I always will stand in their way. And, I've been saying this a lot lately because I see the kind of crowds. We go up to these large areas. We come out to the rural areas. No matter where we go, we have packed houses, some of them. We filled up an arena last time, a massive arena. We had thousands of people outside, couldn't get in. Brad was there. He couldn't get in. He got in. We almost said, keep him out. Let's keep him out, right? No, he's always going to be invited. This is far more than a campaign. This is the greatest political movement in the history of our country. That's what it is. This is a great political movement. This is not just a campaign. And together we will once again fight for Iowa families and Iowa farmers, just as we did 4 straight years. We fought for you. We've done more for the state of Iowa than any president ever in history. There's never been because when you add it all up, what we've done, unlike Crooked Joe, who wants to dramatically increase the estate tax, or the death tax as they call it, I virtually eliminated the unfair death tax, saving countless farms and families of farmers. They love their children. They leave their farm to the children, and the tax was so incredible that the children would often have to file bankruptcy because they had to go borrow money to pay the estate tax or the death tax. And I eliminated that tax. So now you can leave if you love your children. If you don't love your children, then I haven't done that much for you. But some people love their children. Does everybody in this room love their children? I do. Does anybody in this room not love their children? Raise your hand. Oh, but we made one of the greatest trade deals ever made. They buy $50 billion worth of product from this country, and they were buying nothing before that. They were buying nothing. So it was an amazing thing that happened, and it's an honor to have done it. And I do believe I could say that, but I won't say it because I will not say that because my people have said. So I will not guarantee it, but I pretty much guarantee it, okay? Let's vote against Trump because he gave us $28 billion. I don't know. Somehow they got a problem with that one, don't they? The people that are running against us and who, frankly, were not in favor of farmers. Ron DeSanctimonious was not a friend of the farmer. He fought against the farm bill. He fought against ethanol hard, very hard. Now all of a sudden he loves ethanol. About 2 weeks ago it started, right? No one gets abused on trade worse than American agriculture, yet no other president lifted a finger for you. Nobody lifted a finger for you in Iowa, nobody. Under my leadership, we will have a great rebirth of loyalty to the American farmer and loyalty to the American flag. And I'm going to pass something that's so important. We were just about set to do that. We had the greatest economy in history. We were just about set, and then we hit COVID. COVID came, a gift from China. from Wuhan. I told we beat them twice. Pumps. Now, that doesn't sound very glamorous, but it was hundreds of millions of dollars would have had to be spent. That would have been an increase in price to you. And I let them use the existing pumps. Very simple. I brought in experts. I said, well, what's the difference? They said, well, sir, the old ones are actually better. I know that because a lot of times equipment is much better. The older equipment is a lot better than the new equipment. And like grass cutters. All you have in a grass cutter today is environmental computers and equipment. They forgot to put blades on it to cut the grass. So sometimes you'd rather have like a blade. Give me a blade to cut the grass. In contrast to my...
So I'm trying to find, I should have done this before, but I'm trying to find the place where he talks about, because in this speech, I should have prefaced this, he talks about the Supreme Court ruling. This speech took place right after the Supreme Court ruling. So, anyway, let's see if I can find this, and then we'll wrap it up.
Nuclear in Russia, as you know, has women in them. Thousands and thousands murdered in our community. We're also going to fight to give you much better health care, because Obamacare, as you know, is a catastrophe for American families. Between him and Liz Cheney, does she have Trump derangement syndrome or what? No. And I let Scooter Libby out. You know, it's a friend of their family. They didn't do anything for him. I did. They didn't get him out. I got him out. I gave him a pardon because he was treated very unfairly. Scooter Libby, but he was a very good friend of the Cheney family. They didn't do anything for him. I did. But, you know, you'd think they'd be thankful for that, but they don't talk about that. They say I'm a threat to democracy. No, Joe Biden is a threat to democracy by all of the things that we talk about. But I'm also going to indemnify all police officers and law enforcement officials throughout the United States for being destroyed by the radical left for taking strong action on crime. These are people, they want to destroy them because they want to put criminals away. They're forced to do nothing. They cannot do anything when they want to. They do want to. They're the greatest people. The police, and I just met a lot of them in the backstage, are all like incredible people. But, you know, they're under threat of losing their pension, their house, and their family, and losing everything if you touch these people. It's like you who built this country, and it is hardworking patriots like you who are going to save our country. We will fight for America like no one has ever fought before. 2024 is our final battle. With you at my side, we will demolish the deep state. We will expel the warmongers. We will drive out the globalists. We will cast out the communists, Marxists, and fascists. We will throw off the sick political class that hates our country. We will rout the fake news media. We will evict Joe Biden from the White House, and we will finish the job once and for all. The great silent majority is rising like never before, and under our leadership, the forgotten men and women, the men and women of our country have been forgotten. They will be forgotten no longer. They weren't forgotten for 4 years. You know that better than anybody. Nobody's ever done better than we did during that 4-year period. We will love our country. We will take care of our country. We will pray to God for our strength and for our liberty. We will pray for God, and we will be with God. We are one movement, one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God. And together we will make America powerful again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America strong again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And we will make America great again. Thank you very much, Iowa. God bless you. Get out and vote. Get out and caucus. Thank you all. Thank you, Front Row Joes. You follow me no matter where I go.
So, ladies and gentlemen, does that sound like a threat to democracy, to the Constitution? I don't think so. Does the current president have this type of energy, enthusiasm, passion? No. There was a moment within that speech talking about the Supreme Court decision. I just couldn't find it. I thought I could find it during the live stream. I apologize. That's why I was kind of looking around the speech. But here, this is Trump with a message that truckers will appreciate as well in Michigan. So let's continue really quickly. And Pony Soldier, thank you for gifting the membership. Thank you. Earl, thank you so much.
And we're looking, look, we're going to put tariffs on cars. I did it with China. I stopped that inflow with China. We took in $444 billion from China. No president has ever taken in 10 cents. And you know what? I protected the auto workers by doing that because cars were actually taxed when they come in. And if we don't do that, that's what they do to us. That's what they do to us. So we're going to bring manufacturing back. And look, I get along great. The president of Mexico, great person, great person. But what Mexico's done to this country in terms of auto, do you realize what Mexico's done in terms of the auto workers? A friend of mine builds big plants. He's a big supporter, build big auto plants. I said, I'd like to go take a look at some of your plants because I find it very interesting. I want to know exactly what I like to build, and I like to see things like this. He said, good, but we really have to go to Mexico. I said, what do you mean? You build them here, right? Yeah, I do, but the big ones are being built in Mexico. I said, isn't that a shame, right? This is just a guy telling me, no axe to grind. He said, the big plants, President, he's a friend of mine. He used to call me Donald. Now he calls me President. I said, call me Donald. He said, I'll try. And he said, Donald, the big plants, the ones that you really have to see are the ones that we're building in Mexico. They're unbelievable. I said, how much bigger, how much better? He said, far more advanced, double, triple the size of what's happening in the United States. So, President, I said, Donald, President, he couldn't do it. But that's nice that he couldn't. You know what? That's a sign of respect, right? He couldn't call me by whole, for 20 years he called me Donald. He can't call me Donald. I have that with a lot of friends. They used to call me Donnie. They used to call me Don, DJ. Now they all call me President. I say, call me loosen. I say, loosen up. Loosen up. You've been my friend for 25 years. Loosen up. But the big plants are all being built in Mexico. And I'll give you a worse one. China now is building plants in Mexico and selling the cars to the United States. What the hell does that do for us? They're building plants in Mexico right across the border, and the cars are being sold tax-free into the United States. I will stop that the first day. The first day. A vote for Biden is a vote to send tens of thousands of Michigan jobs to China and other places that we don't want them to go. A vote for Trump is a vote to keep those manufacturing jobs in America and add a lot of jobs. We could get, within a very short period of time, just through taxation of people that don't love us, we could get everybody to start moving back here because it wouldn't be economically feasible for them to build in Mexico or China or other places. And it will just take the stroke of a pen, and I can do that very quickly. Biden's ridiculous electric vehicle mandate and his Green New Scam are these are what they're pushing. The Green New Scam. Nobody even knows what the hell's going on. The Green New Scam. They talk about, they don't want anything built with any form of petroleum product. They want wind. But what happens if the wind doesn't blow? They don't know. It's hard to store wind energy, right? You know that. So they want wind, or they want solar, they want all things. It's not big enough to fire up your plants. It's not good. It's not consistent. So Germany tried it, and they went bust. And now they're building coal plants all over the place. And they're building nuclear. They closed up all their nuclear, all their coal. Now they're reopening them. It didn't work. They have suffered greatly. Other countries, it hasn't worked. Why do we have to be doing this? It's not going to work. We need to fire up our plants with petroleum if it's necessary, whatever the hell it takes. Nice, clean, natural gas. Did you ever hear of a thing called clean coal? Clean coal, they do great things with coal too. And we have more of all of these products than anybody anywhere in the world. I call it liquid gold. We have more liquid gold than any country anywhere in the world, including Saudi Arabia, including Russia. And we don't use it. We're now buying oil from Venezuela. We're not buying oil, we're buying tar. We're buying tar. It's very thick. And you know where we clean the tar? In Houston, Texas. It's the only refinery in the whole country that can clean this tar. And that's what we do. And that goes into the air. And I guess, they'll figure out what happens with it. But it's very sad. China is building a coal plant a week, a big coal plant a week. And then they see, well, they finally fired Kerry. He got fired. To me, that was a great thing. He'd go to China. They're building a plant a week, and he'd tell them all of the problems with coal, and they're saying, oh, yes, we agree. In the meantime, they authorized about 70 new plants for next year. The whole thing, we are like the stupid country. But we will be the stupid country no longer. And we had it going.
How can you disagree with Trump on this? You get the far left, and they try desperately to say, well, Trump doesn't care about the working class. That's all Trump is. He embodies the working class. That's why you have truckers who love Trump. That's why you had the lowest unemployment rate, in addition to extremely low interest rates and extremely low inflation, along with real wages going up with Trump. We have the highest ever household median income, a record high, and a record low in poverty. So they want to do things for the environment, and Biden flooded the country full of millions and millions of barrels of strategic petroleum reserves. How is that green? We'll listen to one more speech from Trump, and then we'll go. And be here tonight, by the way, at around 10:30 or so p.m. 10:30 Eastern, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Yeah.
Are not good for a. They are not good for our country. It's no wonder Joe Biden and his thugs are so desperate to stop us. They know that we are the only ones who can stop them. They know that. We did it in 2016. Remember that beautiful night in 2016 where they had Florida locked? It was going to be, and then all of a sudden at about 9:01, Donald Trump has won the state of Florida. Ooh, that was bad. And they go up the whole thing, then they go, Donald Trump. Then we win Alabama, we win this. Donald Trump has won the state of Georgia by a lot. I think we did much better the second time with Georgia, by the way. But Donald Trump has won the state of Georgia. Donald Trump has won the state of South Carolina by a lot. Donald Trump has won the state of North Carolina. We ran that coast up and forth, and they kept saying, they said, with North Carolina, they said, don't worry about it. That's our fire stop. That's our state. He can't win that one. And then they go, this was a whole big thing for an hour. They were saying, the stop is North Carolina. Donald Trump has won the state. And they're like having heart attacks. Oh, those people. Remember the crazy woman in the convention center with the hair and the glasses and the bonnet? And she's screaming, that poor woman. And she's screaming. You know what she's screaming for? She wants continued failure in our country. All of their attacks and all of these corrupt persecutions that they're doing are only happening because I am running for president and leading big in the polls and won a presidential race that we weren't supposed to win. They all said, it's funny, I came here and I came to 4 or 5 other states in the last couple of days, and we were having rallies, 45, 50,000 people. And then I'd leave and I kept hearing how we were going to lose. And how come we're going to lose? With Hillary, she'd have like 300 people show up. With Joe, he'd come, he couldn't fill the circle.
By the way, I think Hillary Clinton will eventually replace Joe Biden. Remember, I've been telling you about a market crash and a recession for a year and a half now. I've been telling you for years that Hillary Clinton will replace Biden. Both things are going to take place, ladies and gentlemen. Hit subscribe to this channel. I think we'll get to 300,000 subs before November. We're at 213 now, ladies and gentlemen, because of you, because of Paul and Nicholas and Earl and everybody here, Christine. I mean, it's because of you. And I thank you to the viewers of this channel in Australia, in the UK, in the Philippines, in Canada, in the Nepal, everywhere in the world that watches. Thank you. Thank you, UK. Thank you so much. And obviously in the US, God bless you and thank you for this. Thank you for supporting this channel. And you know what? This is going to be a very historic, beautiful year in American politics. It will show that one man, Donald Trump, can overcome an entire corrupt political machine. Donald Trump will show that one human being can go up against insurmountable odds and still prevail. Donald Trump is the epitome of the American dream. Here's a man who not only became president and presided over record low poverty. Zero rebuttal from that from the left. We had a great economy and a great foreign policy. Now we have catastrophe after catastrophe, and then they say, what does this country have on Trump? The world is crumbling under your watch, Democrats. I mean, they always pivot to Trump. It's like, well, the world is crumbling and the economy is about to crash. So maybe you should stop focusing on Trump and trying to fix things. Then they say Biden did an amazing job because he passed legislation. So what? The legislation hasn't helped the country, and passing legislation isn't an accomplishment if you have the votes. Big deal. Anyway, hit subscribe and thank you to everybody here.
You know, remember the 8 circles? Good contractor. Those circles were beautiful. I want to find out who is the contract. They were beautiful circles. But they had 8 circles, and they had to put the fake news in those circles because they couldn't fill them up. And then I'd have 50,000 people at these rallies, and I say, why are we going to lose? And we ended up winning Michigan. Remember? That was beautiful. That was beautiful. And Wisconsin. We won Wisconsin. We won Pennsylvania. We won it all. In the latest morning console poll, and we're doing much better now than we ever did. Actually, as you know, we did much better in 2020 than we did in 2016. We got millions and millions of more votes, Pete. Million morning console poll. We're at 80% in the Republican Party and in the new 80%. And in the new Fox poll, which tends to be not such a good poll, we're beating Biden substantially here in Michigan, like by a lot. And we're winning a historic 25% of the African American vote in this state. Nice. Nice. By the way, the biggest change, we're doing phenomenally with the African American voters. Remember, criminal justice reform, helping their colleges and universities out like nobody ever did before. That was a big thing. All of the things we did, opportunity zones with Tim Scott. Tim Scott had this incredible idea for opportunity. It's one of the best economic development programs ever in the history of our country. Nobody talks about it. But we did a lot, and the African-American population understands it. The black population understands it. And with Hispanic, the same thing. We're doing numbers that are 30, 40, 50% higher than they ever heard of before. We're winning places along the border that no Republicans ever won before. We're like a new party in a lot of ways. So we're getting the workers, we're getting...
These videos...
Ladies and gentlemen, be here tonight at around 11 p.m. or 10:30 p.m. Eastern. I will have a live stream, another live stream this evening. Thank you so much, everyone. And you know what? Share this with your friends. If you're new to the channel, be here tonight and just subscribe. We're doing extremely well because of you, ladies and gentlemen. And tell your friends about this channel. Hit subscribe, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. I will be back at 10:30 Eastern. The Supreme Court has already decided. They're just waiting for the right time. And now it's a matter of whether or not it's a unanimous decision. I think it will be. And when it is unanimous, please come to this channel. First thing, because I've been telling you it's going to be a unanimous or at least 8-1 or 7-2. I think unanimous decision for forever. Hit subscribe, everybody. God bless you all. Have a fantastic evening and a fantastic day. Thank you so much. I'll be back 10:30 Eastern.